Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
It's Ed Cohen in San Diego, California. It's a little past 11 a.m. here, 80 degrees sunshine outside there. And our special guest is Laura Kriska. And where are you? Are you in Aruba? No.
Hi, Ed. I'm speaking to you from Brooklyn, New York, where it's about
Brooklyn.
40 degrees today.
Okay, great. And I thank you for being our guest on Global TV, news service of globalbusinessnews.net. Laura Kriska is a HarperCollins leadership author. That's quite an honor. So we're going to let you talk more than me, I'll tell you that. But Laura, I'm reading the notes here. You were the first American woman to work in Honda Motor Company's Tokyo headquarters. And then that experience became the basis of your first book, The Accidental Office Lady. Now, talk about cross-cultural.
I have it right here. Accidental Office Lady.
So were you a VP or were you a secretary or what?
Well, this is going back quite a while, but it was my very first job out of college. And my title was, in English, we would have said executive assistant.
Yeah.
Which sounded kind of important to a new college graduate going all the way to Tokyo. I was very excited about this. But the reality of the job was the title office lady. Actually, it's a phrase they use in Japan. They say OL for short. And the role of an office lady is to serve tea and clean ashtrays, sharpen pencils. So it was quite a culture shock for me, but it was all in Japanese. So I really learned a lot. It was a valuable experience.
So what was the interview process like?
Honda has a huge presence in Ohio. And in college, I had a chance to do what they called a January term. And I got a job working at Honda for the month of January. And I got to know people. And like many, that's what led to the job opportunity. Because Honda has a big presence in Ohio, the kind of expectation was that I would work in Ohio. But I had lived in Japan and I just really wanted to be in Japan. And so I said, I'd really like to work in Japan. And that's how the job took place. Just at that time, a senior level Japanese executive was being transferred back to Japan. And he was in charge of all of North America, and he wanted a bilingual assistant.
That's a great story. So were you what they call a trailing spouse, or were you the kingpin?
I would say we need a new phrase, Ed, because I was single. And so I was completely by myself. I was 22 and I was both completely full of myself, having just graduated from college, really excited, feeling so kind of self-important that I was getting this job in corporate, Japan.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow.
But at the same time, I had no idea what I was doing. The classic example of that is that I purchased, beautiful clothing, corporate, matching briefcase. The first day I walked into Honda in this amazing Liz Claiborne cream colored suit with a matching briefcase. But of course, the briefcase is completely empty. I have nothing to offer in terms of experience. And I walked in to the office in Tokyo, very excited about this position. And before lunchtime, they provided a women's only blue polyester uniform.
So did some lady take you down the hall, or was it the boss who you knew saying?
It was two ladies, and they brought me to a changing room. And I was kind of aware. I mean, when I walked into the headquarters, I saw all these women wearing it was a lot like a Girl Scout uniform, a vest and a skirt, not attractive at all. So I knew that this is where it was going. I didn't like it, but it is part of the lesson of
Yeah.
cultural adjustment, is that I was the visitor. And I consider it the job of the visitor to adjust. And that's what I did. I said goodbye to Liz Claiborne and my beautiful corporate suits, and I wore a uniform every day.
What about your shoes? Did they make you change your shoes?
No, the shoes were up to me to decide. But I'll say that in The Accidental Office Lady, the uniforms become a metaphor for the type of adjustment that occurs, and actually some big changes happen with the uniform that I won't tell you about, but if you want to learn about, you can read my book.
And your book is called?
This book, The Accidental Office Lady.
Yeah.
So we're
Okay.
talking about a book I wrote a long time ago.
That is dynamite. What a great lead in. Okay, so we're going to talk to you about your new book called The Business of We, W-E, and that means multiculturalism. We'll get to that in a second. But we find ourselves in this crazy economy, which is bifurcated. Maybe that's not the right word, but the rich are getting richer and everybody else is not. And it's just the way it's happened with the Federal Reserve making sure that there's no depression, but the people who are taking advantage of that are rich people, as they should. Why not? But there has to be a recovery plan for everybody else, and I know Congress on this day, December 4, is probably going to happen as a Christmas gift. So we want to talk about the new economy and the new government, not from a political point of view, but from a business point of view and an economic development point of view. And all of that relates to lowering the temperature, as they're saying, to get to know your neighbor better and get to know people who don't necessarily agree with everything you say. So how do you collaborate across differences of many people? And that's what this book is all about, right?
Exactly.
How do you
As
do it?
many people have experienced, the us versus them way of thinking has gotten as bad as I've ever seen it in my lifetime.
Yeah, it's scary.
It really is. And
Yeah.
sometimes it gets quite dangerous.
I know you have some nutcakes talking about martial law and some other things. So how do you create trust? Help, how do you create trust across the social political divide?
The basic way that all of us need to build trust is through face-to-face interactions of increasing depth. And this is what I outline in The Business of We, how to go about doing that. If it's okay with you, I'd like to share an image that describes this idea of trust building.
And also show the cover of your new book.
Oh, I will. Thank you very much. Trust is a process. Usually it looks something like this. Here I am.
Stranger, acquaintance, colleague, trusted colleague. So how do you move carefully through that prism? Stranger to acquaintance, colleague, trusted colleague.
I think most professionals have no trouble going from stranger to acquaintance, acquaintance even to colleague. The real trouble happens when there's some type of difference between you and the other person. Maybe it's a religion or age or race or nationality. When there are these differences, it seems to inhibit people from moving from colleague to trusted colleague. This is a huge problem. In my experience, if we start off with the normal gestures, then build on those gestures and keep learning about the other culture, the other person, this is what leads to trust. So for people who want to build connection over some type of perceived barrier, I think it's very important for them just to be aware of this process that goes on and be able to recognize when they themselves are not taking the steps, taking the action to move from one category to the next. So let me give you an example, Ed.
Please.
One of the most simple tasks when you are meeting another person is to know their name. And often, if that person has a name that perhaps is unfamiliar, or you're not sure how to pronounce it, or they say it once kind of fast and you're not sure, so often we don't follow up, especially if you are in the cultural majority in a particular situation.
So that immediately creates a wall.
It creates a barrier between those people, because the next time you see that person, you don't greet them by name. But if you did take the time to learn their name, make sure you know how to pronounce it, that you're saying it in a way, or calling them in the way that they would like to be called, you're just stopping the progress along the trust building scale. So that's an example I see people, that's an example of a mistake I see people making all the time, especially when they're working in diverse environments.
Now, I need to ask you a question about the flowers you have on your desk there on the table. They're very pretty. They look really soft. Are they fragrant?
No, they're hydrangeas, so they don't smell at all.
Yeah, okay. And so no, I couldn't tell from here through the screen. So so do they have a significance from a cultural point of view?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, good.
My husband went and picked them out this morning because I wanted to have some flowers in my shot.
No, that's really nice. So does the color white versus red or green or whatever have a lot to do when you're dealing with cross-cultural situations?
Colors, like many aspects of our behavior, are interpreted differently in different places. I had an American friend, for example, who prepared her wedding invitation, and it was a black tie wedding. And the wedding invitation was white and had a black rose on the edge of this invitation. It was very elegant, and she was very proud of it. And she invited her Japanese boss. I was part of her work group, and the Japanese boss came to me kind of stricken, just saying, what is the deal with this wedding invitation that has a black rose on it? He was horrified. I think from his point of view, a black rose was not elegant. It was an indication of something maybe not so positive, and definitely not something one would associate with a wedding.
Interesting, isn't that? Wow. It's like in some culture, I can't remember right now, but sending a certain kind of flower as a gift could mean death. If it's not, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I remember that.
But I think this is part of the point of we building, Ed, is you have to see invisible information about another person or another culture in order to avoid causing damage in the form of offending somebody in the workplace, having some complaint about you, legal trouble. And if you do the work to try to learn more about that other culture, especially a culture that's very unfamiliar to you, then you can avoid causing trouble, especially unintentional trouble. But better than just avoiding trouble, you can leverage your understanding of that culture to get great outcomes.
So as companies begin to open up or try to this coming months, I think that the video linkage and virtual assignments are here to stay, and hybrid in with visits to the office maybe once a month, if not once a week. So how do you teach this kind of thing? Do you do it in a special video, or do you have a lesson plan?
I do. I've been transitioning, like so many people, from in-person work to virtual teaching. And I've actually found that some aspects of virtual instruction are better. I'll give you two examples. First, more people show up because it's virtual. So attendance seems to be much higher than in-person training. When the companies, I often go to huge companies and I conduct day-long seminars, and it's hard to spend a whole day. But when you're doing shorter virtual sessions, people show up. And the second benefit I've noticed from virtual teaching is using the chat function or using anonymous communication tools, polling tools, so that participants can ask questions that they might feel embarrassed to ask, but they can do it privately. I've had great success using some tools, platforms that ask people to use their phones to give answers and ask questions. And the type of data is much more intimate. I think you get to know what people really think, because we're providing this immediate vehicle that is anonymous. So in one recent training I did, it was with employees who had started working at this company since the pandemic had begun. It's one of the world's biggest banks. There were about 30 people on the call, and we were mostly talking about cultural differences, but I had an opportunity for people to write in, what is it like to be working from home? And the type of answers were really stunning. People said they were lonely, they felt isolated. And then the next question I had asked was, what could your company do to help you feel more connected? And there were great ideas generated by the people who had been feeling like an outsider. So I'm going to tie this back to the book. The Business of We is all about building connection between us and them.
Would the people who gave you those instinctive responses, do you think they would have done that in the office, if they were in the office?
No, I think they felt safe to share somewhat sensitive comments because it was anonymous, and because the opportunity was easy. All they had to do was type it into their phone and it showed up on the screen. And they were also given the affirmation that they were not the only person thinking that way. And so in this case, this training that I was doing, the culture gap was not about nationality or religion. It was about employment. People who were new, who had been hired since the pandemic, who had literally never been in the building where they will work eventually, and they're working every day with people who have decades of experience. So the culture gap had to do with the fact that these newcomers felt disconnected.
So this is all about establishing, I'm reading this, not that I'm a smart guy, I'm reading this. Establishing trust and connection through a 3-step process. You identify as fostering awareness, self-assessment, probably in relation to fostering awareness, right? And then what do you do with it? Action plan, creating a plan for action. Could you identify those in your words and give us an example of fostering awareness, for instance?
So the first step is simply about acknowledging that culture is not just nationality. A person's cultural identity is informed by many, many factors. It could include things like your age, your race, your religion, your gender orientation, your socioeconomic status, your education. There are many, many factors that go into a person's cultural identity. And any of those factors could become the basis of an us versus them culture gap. So for the example I just used about employment, people who are new in an organization have an identity as a newcomer, and that can cause some othering of them, or lack of connection. So fostering awareness is simply recognizing that a person's cultural identity is made up of many factors. So that's just the first step.
Wow, that's good. Fostering awareness, and people are going, yeah, right. And so, how do you get below that? Yeah.
Mhm.
How do you get below that before you get to step two, self-assessment?
Mhm. I would say that depending on the person's experience, they usually have some of their own experience that gives them this identity. For example, to understand each person, I might ask a question such as, you know, tell me about your cultural background. Is there a country or culture that is important in your life? And, where you grew up. If you grew up in the Midwest, if you grew up in the South, there are behaviors and norms that are associated with this. And when I ask for examples of different cultural behavior, this is when people can start to identify, oh yeah, for example, um, in the United States, if you hear the national anthem, you stand up and you take off your hat, right? That's a cultural pattern, and that is considered right and appropriate. And when you give people examples of their own cultural norms, then they can start to see how what they think of as right and appropriate may be different in another country. So in that case, usually international examples are good because they're so obvious. The way people greet one another, for example, in the United States, we used to shake hands, not these days because of COVID. But in Japan, people bow. In Brazil or France, there's a lot of kissing on the cheeks. And so I try to use kind of obvious international examples and then ask people to give me examples from their own life.
Um, I shouldn't say, I'm supposed to be a better moderator. Um, in fostering awareness, I don't mean to harp on this thing, too deep, because I want to get into self-assessment, but the Japanese Honda company, they chose Ohio because it's a cross-section of America all in one state. Between the Northeast, it's way different than Columbus, which is way different than Cincinnati and Athens. All right, just to show you I know something about the area. So the Japanese learned about Americans by opening up and investing millions of dollars into that state. And can you give us a quick insight? Again, fostering awareness, all right?
Mhm.
Take that step now with how the Japanese fostered awareness of America by coming into and investing in and meeting people in Ohio, as
Mhm.
opposed to North Carolina or Texas or California.
Mhm. So I want to make sure I understand your question, Ed. So the question is, how were they influenced
Well,
by?
how they wanted to sell in America,
Mhm.
and they had some kind of a tax deal, I'm sure. But the idea of connecting as
Mhm.
um, step one, fostering awareness, in other words,
Mhm.
understanding,
Mhm.
rather than surface going
Mhm.
into the iceberg below the surface.
Mhm.
And then that creates a self-assessment. Okay, so I'm understanding about you and the differences. So now I'm going to compare that instinctively to me. And
Mhm.
so self-awareness for me, and
Mhm.
then that begins to build now into a much deeper world of understanding. And then that will inevitably flow into an action plan. So the Japanese coming into America and choosing Ohio, and then the wonderful financial success, the market penetration of the Honda cars in the US, that led to the successful relationship whereby you got a job in Tokyo with them because of the trust and awareness of people, right? So that's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, so I think Honda is a great example of this fostering awareness, because there was a lot of thought put into where they wanted to invest, and they did select Ohio. And I think some of that had to do with tax things, as you said, but as I understand it, a lot of it had to do with the type of people who were available to work, and the Japanese people who were in charge of making those types of decisions spent time in different places, and they liked the people in Marysville, Ohio. They were friendly and open to another, nationality of people coming in. And so I think they felt a welcomeness that does exist in Ohio. I know this because I'm from Ohio. There's just a general friendliness. And when you walk down the street, people say, "Good morning." That doesn't happen here in Brooklyn as much. So when Honda decided to invest in Ohio, they were starting to get to know Ohio. And at the same time, people in Ohio started to get to know the people from Japan. And over time, they have built amazing business, but also amazing relationships. Now, I'll give you an example of the way I think it's not a good way of doing this. There are Japanese companies that have invested in the United States, and they will hire local people, but they keep all the positions of power in the hands of people who speak Japanese from the headquarters in Japan. That's a way people do it sometimes. Honda did not do that. Of course, they sent many Japanese people there. They were the ones who know how to make cars, and they had a lot of experience. But early on, Honda recruited, supported, and promoted local American people to be leaders in the company. And when I joined the company, these were leaders that I looked up to. Some of them were Japanese, some of them were Americans, but it was a multicultural leadership team. And then Honda went further and this is in my book. It's an example of we're kind of skipping over the self-assessment part, but part of the action plan that I talk about in the book. And Honda took radical action in the form of recruiting and supporting American people who they considered future leaders of the company. And they sent them to Japan for years-long assignments, 2-3 years with their families. This cost the company a lot of money, but it was an investment. And if you look at the leadership of Honda in the United States today, many of the people in the leadership positions are those people who were recruited and supported to send to Japan. And that's the type of interconnectedness, the integration of culture. Japan has some wonderful aspects to it in business culture and outside of that. And I don't think, Japan is the greatest country ever. I think they have some great things. I think America is the same way. And so Honda is a great example of finding the kind of best qualities of the different cultural tendencies and helping all kinds of people, whether they're from Ohio or from Tokyo, and facilitating multicultural teamwork.
Boy, that's interesting. Okay, let's go back to self-awareness, self-assessment. Why don't you do 1, 2, 3 about that?
Sure. Well, the idea of a self-assessment came through my work with Japanese people who arrived in the United States to work, and they were hardworking, intelligent people, but they never integrated into the local environment.
Mm.
They lived in Ohio or Houston or New York, but they lived a Japanese life. And this led to this. I have a 10-question self-assessment that I ask people to take in the We Building training that I offer. And the idea is to pick a them culture that is relevant to your life. So for the Japanese executives, American culture, or to be more specific, Ohio culture is the example or the cultural group that's relevant to their lives. And then they answer 10 yes or no questions. So a simple first question is, do you know someone who identifies with this culture? And you get a score at the end of this very simple assessment. And the score is from 0 to 10. If you are a leader and you are working with a different cultural group, whatever that happens to be, and you have a 0 score, that's a problem. And it's incumbent upon all of us, especially leaders, to educate ourselves and understand the cultural tendencies, the visible and invisible data of another person, another cultural group, so that we can avoid trouble, that we can avoid complaints, legal problems, financial issues, problems with customers. And again, not just avoid problems, but leverage our knowledge of these other cultural groups into positive outcomes.
So on that, and I thank you for that deep dive. It's fascinating. I was told by a guy, a business guy, is a little bit older than I am, and this was a few years ago. He has experience in international relocations, in helping adjudicate some issues connected with cross-border business dealings. So Japanese, he told me, and I remember this specifically now because of what you're saying, that he said that Japanese companies are very much into international relocations and everything related. And a lot of my customers, but not all of my customers, but a huge number, are dealing with global mobility, talent mobility. All right. So he says that American companies have in general, and very specifically too, they're wasting money almost on purpose by not measuring performance of an assignee while on assignment, and not putting them into a proper position before they get back, never mind after they get back. And the transferee gets PO'd and quits, and where do they go? They go to the competition, who sends them right back out again to compete against company A. All right. So he says that in contrast, the Japanese organizations that he knows about would never, ever send an assignee from Japan out into anywhere, whether it's China or Russia or Brazil or Mexico or the US or Canada, without at least a year's worth of pre-designation training, cultural, language, not only for the assignee, but the family. They don't let that person go because it will be a risk to the company, financial, marketplace, interpersonal, whatever, And so it's really hard to believe that American companies, in that light, from a self-awareness point of view, have wasted all this money. And so it's hard to believe that it's still going on. So from your perspective, Laura Kriska, the next step, the action plan, absolutely critical. So tell us about action plan.
The action a person can take falls into 3 categories. There are safe actions, there are challenging actions, and there are radical actions. As I said earlier, the path toward building trust with anybody, especially somebody who has some type of difference, is face-to-face interactions of increasing depth. Even though we are in a pandemic and most of us are working from home, we all can still work on building trust with others by taking safe actions. So let me give you the example of Black Lives Matter and the huge outpouring of corporate interest that occurred in June and throughout the summer. And I think virtually every major American company made some statement, showed solidarity, kind of acknowledged that this is an important issue that needs to be addressed. And that's great. I loved seeing and hearing these statements from corporate leaders, statements that I had never heard before. But I think we all can agree that speaking is not enough. Saying things need to be better is not enough. It's good, but it's not enough. It's the beginning. So for any business leader who said something or cares about this and is charged with making decisions about diversity and inclusion, for example, it is critical that these people, including myself, take action to keep educating ourselves. So one of the ways, a safe action an individual can take is to read, to learn, to listen to podcasts, to educate themselves about Black culture, about the history that we have, not just about unconscious bias and understanding that type of work. That's important, but just learning about the history. There are so many great resources that are available. The 1619 Project is a podcast that I highly recommend. So you want to talk about race by Ijema Olu. These types of resources are excellent, safe choices that any person who wants to make the workplace safer and more welcoming and productive for all people, we should be reading and listening and learning. So these are the types of things we can do while we're still working from home that will pay off later.
So this is called safe.
I call this safe because it doesn't, there's no vulnerability involved. You can do it at home. Nobody's going to see what you're doing. It's private. There's no risk associated. That's why it's considered safe.
Okay.
The challenging and radical categories involve engaging with humans, and that inherently involves some type of risks. So again, if I'm going to use the Black Lives Matter issue, which is so important, and thinking about so many of the people charged with making decisions in companies across the United States are white people. They're middle-aged white people, just like me. And I would argue that if a person who is charged with making these decisions, if he or she doesn't have awareness and if they haven't done a self-assessment on the topic of Black culture, they are not really prepared to make good choices for their organization. So safe choices is a starting point. And then challenging choices are things like engaging with people, putting yourself in a situation where you might be able to start a relationship, have a meal with somebody who represents or someone who identifies with this culture, and deliberately try to develop your understanding and relationship. And then finally is the radical category, which would involve being in a situation, again, if I'm using the example of a middle-aged white person who really wants to try to narrow the gap between Black versus white, that is very problematic in the United States. If a white person wanted to take some radical action, it might be to join a group where that person was the only white person and make a commitment, an ongoing commitment. And it could be something really simple like a sports team or a choir or something where the white person starts to experience what it's like not to be in the majority all the time, and would have many opportunities to try to build relationships so that you can go from stranger to acquaintance to colleague to trusted colleague level.
This is really interesting stuff. Just don't want to leave anything out here. Um, what are you going to do in your rollout of the book? It's a month away, and are you going to be on late night TV or what?
Oh, wouldn't that be great? If you have any contacts, please let me know.
Well, we could do this show late at night. And now a word from our co-sponsors. Our programs wouldn't happen without the wonderful support of our advertisers. Here they are.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
Cube Monk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Track your goods with our advanced GPS system. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Insured Nomads provides protection and peace of mind, with health insurance, travel insurance, group, or tailored insurance for the globally mobile. Visit us at insurednomads.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Hi, my name is Christine. I'm a nurse from the Philippines, and I got to know IAS through Worldwide Health Staff Solutions, and I want to thank IAS, especially to Matthew, for helping me get my car stress-free, headache-free. And so just want to show you the car that I got. So it's a RAV4 XLE 2020.
As an expat moving to the USA, relocating is exciting, but it can also be stressful. Getting a car, truck, or SUV for personal transportation is usually a high priority. That's where International Auto Source comes in. We make getting the vehicle you want for your work assignment or academic program easy, so you're ready to drive when you arrive. Our product specialists have helped over 50,000 expatriates with their personal transportation needs, making us the largest international auto retailer in the world. International Auto Source gives you flexible payment options to buy, lease, or rent a vehicle from the world's leading auto brands, arrange financing on a purchase or lease without a U.S. credit history, social security number, or driving record, get full insurance coverage, and get approved easily through our low-rate factory-backed financing programs. And because we're an authorized distributor of the world's leading automotive brands, our no-haggle prices are competitive, and the buying experience is hassle-free. We'll even guarantee your new vehicle will be ready the day you arrive. With over 20 years of experience in the global community, we are the vehicle experts for expats. We are International Auto Source.
So
Yeah, launching a book is different right now in the pandemic.
right. So I've really enjoyed this conversation, and frankly, I've learned a lot. And I look forward to reading that book.
The
Perfect.
Business of We.
So how many pages are in this book?
Can I just say it's a quick read?
Oh, sure. Okay, and get it on Amazon?
You can get it on Amazon. You can pre-order it now. It's actually very helpful if you pre-order it now. And I am going to share more information in LinkedIn and Facebook and things like that in the next few weeks.
Good. Well, I look forward to helping to promote it. I wish you well.
Thank you.
And I'd like you to come back and talk about on the other side after you have some experience in the launch about what you've learned from all that. And are you working on your next book yet?
Not yet, but I have some ideas about this because the Business of We is a business book, but the tools, the self-assessment that I talked about, these ideas can be applied beyond the workplace. And it's my great wish to share the message of we building throughout the country and the world, because I think it can help people.
Let me ask you a question as we depart, which is going to take probably a couple of minutes for you. The idea of a corporate project management thing, okay? Let's say you're an executive and the CEO gives you a project and it doesn't matter what it is, just a project that needs to be done for the board, all right? And so it's high profile.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in your words, a middle-aged white gal,
Mm-hmm.
and with a wholesome Americana background, with a Japanese experience, which is unique, and now living in Brooklyn, which is a melting pot of everything. So how different would it be for a woman who is Black in, say, mid-America,
Mm-hmm.
asked to do the same kind of an assignment, not the same assignment, but the same kind of an assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And then think about this same idea in, say, Dubai or Tel Aviv, or, all right, would that person being given the assignment look at it this project the same way. Now, and now take that same idea about a guy or a woman in Tokyo working for a large company. The boss says, "I've got this project and it's very high profile, and so do well with it because a lot of people will recognize you." So each of those types of people are given the project to use all their resources they can, bring things together, put it together. So that is going to be done. That project, those projects, let's assume they're basically the same kind of project, but the people doing it, the cultural behind them, the age bracket of the people, the whatever, it's all different. So would you agree that each project is going to be different, even though it's the same kind of project, because of the nature of the doer? So culture is everything, isn't it?
Culture is a lot. I'm not sure I would agree, because let's take a Black woman, a middle-aged white woman, a guy from Dubai. We have these obvious differences, but if we're working in the same organization, if we have similar projects, it's really important to highlight what we share. So we share a lot in that scenario that you described. We share a common organization. We share a common goal that's high profile. So part of we building is understanding the differences, but focusing on what we share and highlighting that as the commonality to identify we. So in that scenario, I would think that the we common factors are plentiful and should be leveraged toward creating relationships, good communication, high productivity. It's when we focus on the things that are different that I think we end up having problems. We think because somebody looks different or grew up different that they don't share the same values as we do. And sometimes that could be correct, but if we work together and we have the same business goal, we have the same company that's writing our income check and things like that, if we leverage that, if the leadership in an organization leverages that commonality, I think many of the us versus them dynamics disappear.
Laura, Kriska, thank you very much for your smarts. This has really been brilliant. And please come back on
I would like that.
on Global TV Talk Show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.